Humans have had a close relationship with animals for thousands of years. Scientists agree the domestic dog has been a trusted pet for around 15,000 years. And cats became part of the household from 10,000 years ago. And now it's estimated there are at least 600 million pet cats in the world. Exotic pets have also been kept for thousands of years. It's well documented that the Egyptians kept baboons as pets, and exotic animals kept in the home feature in many ancient texts. In modern times, the keeping of exotic pets has increased. A staggering statistic is that there are more tigers in the US alone than there are in the wild. Animal owners truly believe they are playing a role in preserving the numbers of exotic animals. But on the other side of the debate, there are those who believe it is a cruel practice to keep any animals in captivity. This series explores the issues from both sides, from those who know the dangers, but see the benefits, to others who condemn the keeping of exotic pets. Their stories follow. In Abney Park Cemetery, North London, there is an unusual gravesite, a sleeping lion, a memorial to Frank C. Bostock. Frank was a showman who toured with exotic animals throughout Europe. In 1893, he moved to America and connected the masses with these amazing creatures. He is credited as being the first person to bring a pet lion to the US. Frank was known to have been mauled several times, which is thought to have contributed to his early death in 1912 at the age of 46. Was this where the owning of great cats as pets began in the US and continues to this day?
The Lion Week. And as you can see here, this little pet Squeaky the lion makes a wonderful house pet.
The danger factor is always there with these large feline pets, as this old clip shows. Watching it is a little unsettling, but it isn't enough to stop more and more people seeking the unusual as a pet.
Animals are family, and it doesn't matter if it's a tiny little house cat or, a lion or tiger or bear. You have that connection with animals regardless of size. When I was young, I used to think I could save the world. And I was always dragging home misfits, and I worked at a veterinary clinic for a while, and don't put the dog to sleep, I'll find him a home.
Jill Carnegie's passion to save animals has become her lifelong mission. But her focus is not just about rehoming the neighborhood dog. In the town of Sharon, Wisconsin, the Valley of the Kings Sanctuary is home to a large variety of exotic animals. Abused, abandoned, retired, and injured, these large pets aren't for the faint-hearted. And for Jill, having a rebellious streak has led her to this amazing work.
When I was a child, I was always dragging things home and getting into trouble. My mother hates animals. She's 96 years old. She's still alive. And we had many, many discussions about animals, and I ended up getting married young when I was 17 to basically get out of the house. And I married a guy because he had a horse, which is really stupid. But, and then we ended up here. I divorced him in '96 and then remarried Jim, who loves animals as much as I do. We've been married 20 years now.
Jill and Jim are dedicated to looking after the welfare of their animals. Sanctuaries are common in the US, so there's a need to rehome. In captivity, big cats have been known to attack humans with devastating results. This horrific scene is testament to what can go wrong. A man trying to feed a couple of circus animals finds out the hard way that a tiger is a predator and one that can strike at any time. The defense is a couple of wooden poles, but the man struggles to save his hand. From minor injuries to permanent disability and even death, it's never wise to assume a big cat is a tame animal, no matter where you might find it. In Jill's sanctuary, there's no crossing of the boundaries, even if one of their residents was once a family pet.
This is Janie. She's grumpy. She hasn't been here very long. She's from a lady in Texas who has cancer, and she couldn't care for her. She was a pet, and she actually adored the lady. She's still adjusting. It'll take her time. The interesting thing is I can come out and she's fine with me. I can give her treats and talk to her, and she rolls over, and I don't go in with her. I wouldn't trust her. She's actually a very sweet cat. She just doesn't like a lot of people. She feels threatened. And she's got to adjust living with a few girls down here, which she's not crazy about. So eventually she'll have a buddy when we get a male lion in. And then we do vasectomies because we don't believe in breeding. So she'll be happy. Callie, hi girl. This was someone's pet. They lived in Florida. She is about 17 years old, and she's been here ever since she's been about 5. She lived in their house till she was about 4 or 5 years old, and she had the run of their backyard. And then they had to move, and no place would allow them to have their lion. Kubla, come on. Come on, there we go. What a good tiger. You're such a good tiger. He's one of the biggest tigers we have, but we have one that's even larger. And he's 17, so he's not a youngster by any stretch. But he's been here since he was 4 months old. He was somebody's pet in Big Bend, Wisconsin. They bought him illegally from a breeder in Arizona. And then they realized when he was about 4 months old that the furniture and the kids were not safe. And so they did the right thing and brought him out. And then they said, we will never get another exotic again. So thank God for that. He's probably at least, I would put him 1,100 pounds easily. Yeah, he's massive.
There is no doubt Kubla is one very large animal, and with that size comes a big appetite. Tigers rely primarily on sight and sound for hunting. They will see you long before you have any idea they've been sizing you up. A tiger can consume almost 100 pounds of meat at a time. Large prey are no barrier. Even if you've been working with your trained cats for decades, you can never trust a tiger. It only takes one shocking moment to change your life to near death, as this Spanish circus trainer found out during a performance. Kubla doesn't have to go on the prowl for anything but more affection. And with Jill around, that's a given. He's an absolute love bug. He doesn't have a mean bone in his body. But you always have to remember that they're trained and never tamed. They are who they are, and even a good one can cause serious harm. So you just don't want to, especially the older I get, I guess I get smarter too. Yeah, we always take tons and tons of precautions. And in 44 years, we've never had an injury, never had an escape, never had anything happen. Knock on wood. And everything that's come in as babies get huge like this, I think because we feed every day. We don't believe in fasting them. And they get an enormous amount of calcium and vitamins and absolutely everything that they need, where a lot of private people don't have a clue what the animals should get. We've gotten cougars in with rickets, others with broken bones, and just all kinds of horrible things.
So a zoo will take ground meat, put it on a little platter, slide it under and take it away. So they don't have anything to chew on, and then maybe one day they'll give them bones so they can chew on a bone. But the zoo cats that we've gotten in have had slab fractures, really bad teeth that our vets have had to put back together again. These guys, ones that have come in when they're young that we've raised, even when they're senior citizens and we knock them out, their teeth are absolutely pristine because they get everything that they need, the hide, the bone, just everything. Plus they get supplements.
Jill feels right at home with these enormous cats. These are her adored pets. But when the need arose, she took a big step out of her comfort zone to start welcoming large Syrian grizzlies to the sanctuary.
So gentle, yeah. Which at first I was like, grizzly bears? I don't think so. And when I saw them and how gentle they were, I'm like, okay, this could be doable.
Jill's not at ease with these enormous bears, but is growing to like having them around. However, choosing to hang out with these massive predators inside the cage, knowing they're capable of suddenly turning on anyone, isn't a choice for most of us. Is this bravery or a death wish? Bears are aggressive. Camping in their territory is a risk to you and your property. And yet, many people have these same bears living in their homes. Deaths from bear attacks are rare in the U.S. On average, 3 people per year are taken, which makes the odds of being killed very small. But does this risk increase with more exposure? While Jill devotes her life to caring for her pets, there also comes that heartbreaking time when you need to say goodbye.
We hold the record for the oldest living feline in the world, and that was Sammy. He lived to be 36 years old, a purebred Sumatran tiger. And he was a little butterball the day we put him to sleep, sadly, but his hips gave out. So when the quality of life is gone, then it's time for them. We cremate all of our big cats and our other animals. That way no one can dig them up 100 years from now and get them. I'm like King Tut with the grave, so. And this is Huggy. This is the one that I have to put to sleep, and it's really killing me. He's an old man. He's in multiple organ failure. But it's his time. He's 22 years old. It's heartbreaking, even though you know it's the right thing to do, you know. This time next week, he'll probably be passed on to Rainbow Bridge. Yeah, but I'm gonna miss him. I will absolutely miss him terribly. It's really hard. I have a lot of favorites that are buried here. I had lost my son in 1998 in a car accident, and he's buried here, and this is where Jim and I will be buried as well, because we want to be with those we love. I don't want to be in a human cemetery. It just doesn't feel right. I love the elderly, and I love the misfits. That's really where my heart is. And when a cat is old and senile, they forget they eat. So you feed them, and 10 minutes later, they're like, hello, I didn't eat today, and you got to give them some more, and that goes on all day.
Jill is a seasoned conservationist. Her motivation is about rescue.
It's so amazing. When they're rescued, they're completely different than one you've raised as a kid. They are so grateful. And the exotics are exactly the same way, because we loaded these animals up and they know they're going to a better place instantly.
This certainly is a better place with superior conditions than where these animals have come from. For Lena and her mate Thina, their lives have improved remarkably.
And we have a little crippled tiger here. This is one of my favorites. This is Lena. She came out of the same seizure in Indiana, and the SWAT team was there. They had all their long guns, and it was pretty scary. Here she comes. There she comes. And as you can see, her knees are really bad. Hi. The way she walks. Hi, little pumpkin. Hi, how are you? This cat and this other cat over here, they lived in circus roll crates. 6 foot by 4 foot, maybe 5 foot, their entire lives. They were in a dark barn, no light. We had to use bolt cutters to open all the locks because it had been ever since they were just prisoners in those little areas. When Lena came, she would sit and she could kind of paddle around like this on her feet, and then she'd do this, like stargazing. And now, as you can see, she can run and she can play. And our vet is amazed that she gets around as well as she did because it was not expected at all. But she probably will never live to see old age because of her handicap. But for the time that we have with her, you know, we'll do anything and everything for her. But this owner that owned this cat, it was horrific. He was an older circus mentality kind of person, and then once a year he'd roll the wagons out for the neighborhood kids to see and then roll them back into their dark barn. He would take a stick and just scoop the poop out and all over the floor in there. It was awful. It's probably one of the worst seizures that we've ever been on. It was absolutely horrific. This is the other one that came with Lena that lived in a circus roll crate. This is Stina. She was very young to begin with when we got her. She's about 18 months old. So she wasn't left in that condition. So like this one was for 6 years to become neurotic. But most of the neurotic behaviors is gone now, which is great. But she doesn't seem to have been scarred at all as far as, you know, being abused like that. She's really got a cute personality. She's very outgoing. She does have broken teeth from grabbing the bars where she lived. And she was really thin when she came. He's so sweet. But even though he's got hybrid in him, you can't trust them. They have a switch because they've got the wolf in them. But he's a very sweet boy. He loves his attention. He loves his cuddles. Yeah, you're a good boy. We lost his sister to cancer when she was 3. Hi, Milo. I think he's 8 or 9. And it's very interesting because we have a couple volunteers that he hates. And he will actually charge the fence to eat them. Yes, it's amazing. I mean, like, he knows you guys are all animal people. What a good boy.
Like many homes, there's often a need for renovations, and the Valley of the Kings Sanctuary is no different. Nestled on 10 acres of farmland, the sanctuary was established more than 30 years ago. And as more funding comes through, the better the conditions become for these majestic creatures.
If every sanctuary in America did not have big cats and was empty and they had a place to go, that would be my dream. I would tell you, if we could buy the property that surrounds us, I would give them, if we had the money, 2, 3, 4, 5 acre pens. That would be the ultimate. It'd be awesome. The interesting thing is when they come from an area that they have a small pen and you give them a larger pen, they're so happy and content with what they have because they've never had a large area. The one lion that was kept in a circus roll crate her entire life, we just moved her to the big area up in the compound, and she didn't know what to do. She would stay in the small area and she would kind of look around. She wouldn't play with her toys. She wouldn't roar or vocalize. And it took her about 2 weeks to figure out, okay, so I can go over here, and oh my gosh, I can go over there too, and oh, there's a toy, and now she's playing and acting like a normal animal. So it's kind of like you have to get inside of their heads to kind of rearrange their thinking that, okay, it's okay to have that much room.
Jill and her husband are very committed to ensuring their beautiful animals have a great second chance to a much improved life.
You come to the point you can't save them all. It's not humanly possible. But if everybody took care of their own backyard and did what they could, that the world would truly be a better place. So everyone who comes through our gates, we make a lifetime commitment to, and they're here forever, through thick and thin and illness and whatever. And I know that the time that we need to let them go, that they had a good life for the time that they had with us.
Well, yeah, I get bitten every day. Well, probably not every day, but once a week. And that's because I breed pythons, I breed young snakes that are harmless. Pythons don't have any venom. Some snakes may be technically venomous, but not that bad. So I've had a few bites I don't count. If you get to the pointy end, I've had 4 intensive care visits. So 4 times the word's been a bit touch and go. Every time was something I did wrong, yes. And when you do something over and over, sometimes it's complacency sets in.
Just how close would you get to a snake? To feel the snake's body slithering against your skin. Even experienced snake handlers, like this one in Cyprus, who removed the snake from the neighbor's backyard, can run into a problem.
Yes?
Yes. She started from the job because she had small.
The adrenaline factor is huge, but the consequences can make for a very bad day. However, when you're performing for a crowd, it's all about the showmanship.
This one here is a tiger snake and potentially very, very lethal if it bit you. Because this one's captive bred and it's used to me and I've never given it any reason to bite me. Snakes aren't designed just to bite for no reason. If it did, it would be, yeah, a bad day. It's potentially one of the most lethal land snakes in the world. He won't just bite you. This is the misconception. He doesn't want to bite you to get away. So often you won't get a warning. You'll hear a rustle in the bush and that's him already getting away. 80% of our hospitalised bites, people trying to catch and kill the snake. It's simple. People think they're dangerous and because they've got to deal with this dangerous animal and they deal with it by getting the shovel, trying to kill it, and then they realise how quick and agile these animals are when it's too late.
Australian Gary Davies has had a fascination with snakes since he was 5 years old. He knew he wanted to be a snake man. Over the years, he gathered a collection of the most venomous, including the tiger snake, king brown, and death adder. Add to that a few different species of pythons and lizards, and you've got a rather uncommon assortment of pets. For Gary, this passion for reptiles has led to a career working with snakes and educating the public. But quite frankly, it seems Gary prefers snakes to humans.
Look, honestly, what a man and his snake do in the privacy of their own snake shed is a different story. But in public, I don't go handling snakes in order like this. It's just to show you that they are not, you know, red-hot killers that are out to get us. Naturally, I'm not his prey. Tiger snakes are far from violent or aggressive animals. In fact, if you're going to learn snakes, tiger snakes and king browns are one of the most quietest, easily chilled snakes of the venomous snakes there are.
If you're new to snakes, perhaps starting with a couple of Australia's most venomous isn't for the beginner. They may be laid back and chilled out, but you don't want to be surprising them.
You keep within boundaries. I'm not doing anything to cause this snake to actually bite me. And he is getting close to full grown now. But it's not about size. Venom, it doesn't come down to size with venom. You know, you need a mil of venom. It doesn't matter how big the snake is. So it's not like, oh, he's too big to handle. No, that one there it's going to give you, you know, a bad day as bad as anything on the planet can, as far as venom, you know. I don't recommend it as a pet. If you want to like snakes, there's a whole lot of less toxic snakes, you know, safer snakes to keep. But if tiger snakes are your thing and you've got to that stage, then great, you know, I'm all for it. But I just don't suggest it for someone thinking about a pet snake. No, don't think of a tiger snake. Don't think of a venomous snake. I think keeping a venomous snake is something you evolve to and you get to rather than trying to aspire to.
If you're thinking a tiger snake might be off the pet list, after all, it is one of the top 3 most venomous land snakes in Australia, then you may be interested in the king brown. It comes in much lower on the danger scale, at around number 6.
This is a king brown. Particularly huge for a king brown.
Might not be able to hold up. But it is a venomous snake that's very, very active.
Yeah, he's going to be a lot more active. He wasn't captive bred. He was actually wild caught under licence. But he has got used to me and that I don't hurt him, so he's in the process of calming down very well. But it is a process thing where this one I won't give the same sort of luxuries as I would that tiger snake. It's just understanding your own animal again. He can turn around and bite. But he's slowly learning since he's been caught that, oh, well, this guy's not too bad.
If you're a snake in captivity, you don't get to choose your owner. But Gary is a role model for responsible pet ownership.
For one, he's a reptile feeder, so he'll feed on other snakes. He's pretty good at catching and killing, overpowering even Death Adder's other venomous snakes. So I'd never keep him together with another snake, especially if he's hungry.
Great tip for the uninitiated. It pays to do your research. Snake ownership is serious business. There's a lot to learn in order to stay safe.
The king brown is the largest member of the black snake family, so he's not actually a brown snake. But because he's often brown in colour, they've called him the king brown. The other name is mulga snake, which is probably a better name. If you got bitten by this, you'd need black snake anti-venom, not brown snake. They're very widespread, so they're found right throughout the whole of Australia, except for the very southeast and the very southwest. Now, a big one of these can push 3 metres, and that's probably the Kimberley forms. The ones in the Kimberley are the biggest. And you grab one of them by the tail in the wild, you know you've got a snake when he's 3 metres long. A snake that big and with the name King Brown, that's where he gets these reputation from him. Everything that happens, people talk about, oh, did you hear about the King Brown? And these are stories that have been exaggerated because it sounds such an aggressive animal, it sounds so big. Yes, it's a perception of deadliness. It can be dangerous, but again, I think we carry the legends a lot more than the actual reality deserves. If they're not natural predators, they're going to bite out of fear. Now, you can break down that fear. They're not scared of you so much. There's no reason for them just to bite randomly.
Fear is quite possibly the #1 reason why you would be bitten. If you see a snake sliding through the bush or accidentally step on one, there's a really good chance you're going to panic and perhaps end up in the hospital. Even with all of Gary's experience, he's admitted to a few close calls.
I've been handling venomous snakes for well over 25 years. Anytime you get bitten, it's because you've crossed a line. You've been complacent. And hopefully that brings you down to earth and you see your mistake, or else you're just going to make it again. There's always an adrenaline rush when, like you said, you know it can go wrong in a second. You've got to be dead if you don't get adrenaline out of that. Now, hold a tiger snake like this, I mean, you've got to be dead if you don't get some sort of adrenaline rush. But that's not the right reason to keep them. To keep them for the beauty of the animal. You're working with these animals, you've got to have the understanding there's certain lines you don't cross. You've got to respect that potential risk. There has to be a knowledge of it and an understanding that if I make a mistake here, this is going to end badly for me. There's a hot zone. So while you're in that hot zone, where you're in a hot zone, that's where the potential is. You stay out of that and you're quite, you know, he's not lurking, waiting for you. Well, not if you're a good keeper. If you lose them around the house and they're just lurking somewhere you don't know, but a good keeper with snakes, he's got an enclosure where he lives and, you know when it's, you're in a dangerous position, and that's when you've got to be switched on.
Owning any pet that is considered a little unusual often comes with risks that can be fatal. But it can be an adventure for the seasoned, unusual pet lover.
You can potentially keep one as a pet, but you have to show the authorities, take the right steps before they deem that you're safe enough to keep one. I would never suggest anyone keeping king browns or tiger snakes unless they've kept snakes for a long time and they actually know quite a bit about venomous snakes. You can only really learn that by experience. But the adventure side is getting out there in the scrub and actually finding these animals, and that's my passion, finding king browns in the field, in the wild, and watching what they do. And that's where our learning comes from, you know. So I guess that's my passion, but everyone's different.
If you're convinced you're ready to proudly own a pet snake, then moving to a non-venomous variety is a great place to start. Although they can still be a bit of a handful. Meet Bob.
He's an older python. His name's Bob, but I've had him about 14 years from birth. He's been around people his whole life. He works with kids and in crowds, and often if I'm standing close to someone who's holding him, he will come over to me. And he doesn't love me. I have no doubt he doesn't love me and has an affection for me, but I'm a familiar scent to him, just like if he had a hollow log in the wild that's a familiar place. It's a familiar scent.
Bob is likely to reach a maximum length of 4.5 to 5 meters. But olive pythons have been known to get up to 6.5 meters or more. That's a lot of snake to keep your eye on.
Me and Bob, often there's things that happen around the house that people would think strange. I'm making a sandwich with him around my neck. Seems strange to some people, I guess. It's quite normal around my house. I guess sometimes people think of pets as something that you can cuddle and grab hold of. Now, that, to me, not necessarily true. You know, you don't have to pat an animal. You can still have a pet and just enjoy it for what it is. And I think that maybe that's a line that some people call some things a pet because they can cuddle it at night and give it a hug. Some animals don't necessarily want to be hugged. But does that make them not a pet? If you're looking after them, you keep an animal in captivity and you give it all its needs and you look after it and it's a healthy animal and you get enjoyment out of it, then to me that's a pet. You've got to have respect, and they can be dangerous, but there's so many things in this world that can be dangerous, you know? Some people get married, God, you know, that's danger there. You know, each to their own, really. Some people think that reptiles are easy, especially snakes, easy pets to keep, and I don't like that attitude, because you think you're going to get a pet because it's easy to keep, then that's probably the wrong reason to get them. They can be easy once you understand their needs, but sometimes their needs aren't as simple as people think. You know, a lot of people think, oh, you just keep them warm. Well, keeping them warm, you can kill them by overheating them. I do what I love. Since I was 5 years old, I loved snakes, so if I could turn my life into snakes, that's what I did. But again, it comes down to some people keep it just for their own ego, especially when it comes down to, well, predator pets or things that are potentially dangerous. Often the person's keeping it just to say, look at me, you know, and I think that's the wrong sort of person, and often they're the ones that make mistakes. And in this game, the problem becomes ours because someone keeps things for a wrong reason. If they get bitten by a tiger snake, they make the news. And there's knee-jerk reactions that come to the rest of the hobby. Everyone that keeps these animals has to get affected by the weakest few. So to me, I always believe that people, if they want to keep venomous snakes particularly, as long as they know what they're doing and they are doing it for the right reasons, not just to be tough or look at me, because that's just going to end wrong sooner or later.
People see these cats on Disney films, you know, oh, they all look all friendly and I want one of those. And what happens? They get one and oh dear, it attacks me. It's destroyed my house. Oh, I don't want it anymore. That's the pet side. But then a number of these private breeders are doing the job properly.
Dr. Terry Moore knows cats. In fact, he loves cats so much he has devoted his life to ensuring the survival of a wide number of species. But don't be fooled by the fact that Terry is in the enclosure with this Temix golden cat. These cats are quick and can attack. However, in the right hands, they can be mostly controlled.
And then there's the African golden cat, which is much more orange than that. Keeping cats in captivity, there's the pluses and the minuses. If they're doing it properly, and there are a lot of private breeders in this country that we work with, A lot of the private breeders work with zoos and are providing livestock for show in zoos so that people can come along and just understand why we need to protect them. But then you've got to differentiate between the people who look after the animals properly and the ones who just want them for status. You know, I've got this cat. Having one as a pet, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work, because very few of these cats are friendly enough to be classed as a pet.
These cats are all in good hands at the Cat Survival Trust. While the trust is focused on long-term conservation of cats in the wild, this 12-acre property at Harfordshire, England, is a haven for unwanted and surplus wild cats from zoos and other collections where cats have proven to be too much of a handful.
When I was studying at London University back in the 60s, I was actually working part of the time for my uncle's firm in aviation insurance to pay my way. And one day I went into Harrods, and there was a South American margay for sale for £300, and I thought about this. I thought, that's a nice cat, and for the wrong reason, to have it as a pet. And I went away and got the money together, and 3 weeks later went back to buy it, but unfortunately Lady Fisher of Kilwardstone Wildlife Park beat me to it. But between 66, which is when I saw this cat, and 75, I accumulated so many books about wild cats and realised that, you know, there were 37 species of cat, not just your lions and tigers, but, you know, such amazing cats as pampas cat and Andean mountain cat and sand cat and Eremite cat and so on, which I'd never heard of. I mean, they weren't in the school curriculum. So I really got into this and felt, well, something ought to be done. And realised very quickly, after a few years, that sadly there wasn't a rescue operation in England to take surplus and unwanted cats. So a group of us got together, and in 75 we formed the charity, basically to look after unwanted and confiscated cats from illegal collections. He's getting a bit heavy to hold, and you've got to be careful when you're holding him. It's uncomfortable for him. The Eurasian lynx is an interesting one. The Scandinavian, there are about 2,000-3,000 left. The Central European are 200 or 300, and the Italian down to about 40. This is a Central European, so with 200 or 300 left is not good. He's only really friendly with 4 of us. We used to allow people in with him, but not anymore. He picks up on the slightest element of fear and get quite aggressive.
Working with these animals requires a lot of knowledge on what makes them tick.
We wanted to study cats in the wild. We wanted to find some ways of perhaps preserving cats in the wild, keeping them safe in the wild. We wanted to provide an educational service. The first 30 years were pretty difficult, although in '92 we did manage to buy 10,000 acres of virgin forest in northeast Argentina with 5 species of cat living free in their own environment. And in future we want to buy more natural habitat, because keeping animals in their own environment is by far the most economic, most ethical way. And of course, to save cats, you've got to have that entire ecosystem intact. Any part of that food chain is out and the cats are going to die.
There is no doubt the work that Terry and his team of volunteers do is vital to the survival of many cat species. The jaguar is endangered, and the work at the Cat Survival Trust is about helping animals like Athena, affectionately known as Jags. But we all know looks can be deceiving.
Jaguars are only found in South and Central America. They're quite different from the leopards. They're much bigger, much chunkier, and much more dangerous. They'll take crocodiles out of the rivers and just crunch them. Give her a whole deer and there is nothing left. I mean, she will eat the skull, the hooves, absolutely everything. I go in with all the cats here with the exception of the jaguar and the amio leopards, because She was already an adult when she came. I didn't have the chance to build a relationship with her, and she wouldn't know her own strength. She'd want to play hard.
The unpredictability of a pet in captivity is never something to be ignored.
Out of all the cats we keep here, she's probably the most dangerous. Cats are potentially dangerous and not ideal as pets in any way.
Big cats have an enormous appeal as a pet, particularly when they're young. They are playful and often have many of the enduring characteristics of a domestic cat. However, when you think what a domestic cat can do to a small mouse, you'd have to be mindful that the time may come where you could end up being the big cat's human mouse to torment and tease until your last breath is taken. Perhaps these cats are far more spectacular in the wild than in your backyard. But for these cats to roam free, a lot of work needs to be done.
Keeping cats in captivity is a sort of stopgap. Let's face it, most of the wild places where you find cats are being wiped out. There's just too many humans. We need oil, we need minerals, we need metals, we're destroying the habitat. And so every species is seeing falling numbers every year. The way it's going, we could lose every single species, not only of cats, but everything else.
Research and breeding programs are vital to save these animals.
Zoos have played a major part in education, allowing people to understand why animals are important. There are some very good zoos who do a lot of conservation work. You know, they breed certain species in captivity and then release them back into the wild. For the good zoos that have lots of information, lots of placards and posters all about why we have to save animals, that's great. But I think what we have to do is look really seriously at the zoos that are underfunded, that aren't looking after the animals properly, and they should be closed. So the question is, in the future, so many of these cats that have many subspecies, how relevant is it to say, right, let's save all of the different subspecies? Pumas, they're originally, they thought to be 29 subspecies. So when you've got a species like the puma, what you find is that those that are living near the equator are much smaller. Those living away from the equator are much bigger and much chunkier, and their fur is much thicker. Sadly, because jaguar need much stronger enclosures, this is a much thicker wire than you would keep any of the other cats that we have in. Zoos can't generally afford to build a huge enclosure like this with this extra cost added to the wire. She's now unfortunately too old to breed, and because the jaguar stud book have said, look, if we breed a load, where are we going to put them? Because zoos can't afford to build this sort of enclosure anymore. So there is a restriction on breeding. Generally speaking, stud books are there to make sure that we don't get surpluses in official collections. And that's very sensible with the jaguar, because there's a fair number left in the wild, although as they destroy more and more forest, we're losing habitat at such an amazing rate. And ultimately, some of the subspecies could disappear.
Whether you're looking at these cats thinking, I want one as a lovable, purring pet, or if you feel you should get on board to help save many species of big cats, it's clear the survival of these incredible animals is up to the human race. We've hunted to the point of extinction. We've destroyed habitats, but we can still make a difference.
My number 2 is more than capable of taking over. We have a number of volunteers who potentially could take over in future times. And we're very lucky. We've had a lot of volunteers in the past who are emailing me quite frequently. Are we in a position to have them back? They don't need much money. They just need enough for food and clothing and bits and pieces. we're at a situation now where we know a number of our supporters have left quite substantial sums to the charity, not only to keep it going, but also to buy more natural habitat in countries around the world. So I feel pretty happy about the current situation with the Trust. We don't have any debt here. The property is effectively owned by the charity now. I don't have any fears in the future. Too many animal collections don't think ahead. And that is one problem with people who keep exotic cats as pets. What is going to happen when they die? What is going to happen when they can't look after them anymore? But with the huge number of people who keep private collections of all sorts of animals, they really need to think this through, because the only option is to put them down. And then what was the point of having them in the first place? People who keep these animals, a lot of them will have friends and relatives come and see the cats, will learn more about why the cat is endangered, and that will all help towards people in the future providing funding for new projects, particularly in the wild. And certainly we found by having cats here that when we bought our 10,000 acres of forest in Argentina, people were very happy to support it because they saw the cat and they saw why we wanted to save the cat in its own habitat.
Humans have had a close relationship with animals for thousands of years. Scientists agree the domestic dog has been a trusted pet for around 15,000 years. And cats became part of the household from 10,000 years ago. And now it's estimated there are at least 600 million pet cats in the world. Exotic pets have also been kept for thousands of years. It's well documented that the Egyptians kept baboons as pets, and exotic animals kept in the home feature in many ancient texts. In modern times, the keeping of exotic pets has increased. A staggering statistic is that there are more tigers in the US alone than there are in the wild. Animal owners truly believe they are playing a role in preserving the numbers of exotic animals. But on the other side of the debate, there are those who believe it is a cruel practice to keep any animals in captivity. This series explores the issues from both sides, from those who know the dangers, but see the benefits, to others who condemn the keeping of exotic pets. Their stories follow. Standing next to an elephant is an awe-inspiring experience. There's a thrill that comes with being so close to a wild animal, a mix of fear and excitement. No matter how exhilarating it is, there's always an element of danger. Charlie Samet is the founder of Monterey Zoo in Salinas, California. It's because of his experience and incredible way with his animals that working not just so close to, but actually amongst a herd of elephants is even possible.
Christy, Paula, Buffy. There must be a convention going on down there that I wasn't made aware of. Hi, girl. Come on. You ever been in a stampede? This is the first time for everything. Hi, girl. Move up. Ah, what's going on here? Not a girl. That's gross. Christy. That's Buffy. Buffy was a carnival elephant. Christy was a circus elephant. They just both found retirement homes here. I do have to say, though, from the entertainment industries they came to us very healthy, very sound, very well taken care of. So they weren't what I would consider a rescue by any means. They were just done working in those environments and needed a place to retire.
Had it not been for Charlie, there's no way we would have felt comfortable enough to come so close to these potential lethal heavyweights.
Somebody once said that the day you get elephants, your life changes forever. And they couldn't have been more right. So our entire lives revolve around these elephants. If we're on a boat somewhere in the Bahamas and I get a phone call that one of them is down, we're on a plane home. Doesn't matter. Nothing comes before the elephants. They're literally your children. They're very demanding. They're, they are dangerous. When you first get them, you have to move into their lives very carefully. This is Paula. She's our old lady, and it's really kind of funny that she's here right now because she's usually so bashful. What are you doing? Huh?
Charlie started out in law enforcement with no ambition to work with exotic animals.
I was a police officer here in Seaside. We served a warrant one night and arrested somebody. And he had a pet mountain lion in the back in his garage. And long short of it, I ended up with it. I took it home that night. Stupidest thing I ever did. I threw a mountain lion in the back of a Toyota pickup truck with a camphor shell and took it home with me. I put it in my dog kennel in the backyard. That's where it all started. Hey, what are you doing?
Of course, once you've got a mountain lion, why not also get an African lion? Charlie did, and it would change his life completely. The lion turned out to be an extraordinary animal named Joseph, who led Charlie into a new career working with Joseph and other animals in the film and entertainment industry. Still, he certainly never imagined he would end up owning elephants.
No. Really? How rude. My personality does tend to lend itself to doing well with them. I'm, fairly aggressive, fairly dominant, and they respond well to that. They're very comfortable with that. So we've always done very, very well together. But I gotta tell you, we've had some horrifying days, sad days that, we've lost two, and it's taken weeks to get over. What are you doing? So I guess some could argue that this is probably my favorite place in the world. It's just one of those things where you can't imagine what it's like to have friends like this.
Highly intelligent animals, elephants form deep family bonds and live in tight family groups called a herd. Charlie is part of the Monterey Zoo herd.
Well, I actually do feel like one of them. So as soon as they get to me, they do what they need to do, they say hi, and then I'm just one of them, and then they start doing whatever else around me. The thought of them going out our driveway and us not seeing them again just couldn't happen. Couldn't imagine it.
Elephants are often seen as placid, gentle animals, but there's no doubt they can pose a very serious threat. Charlie's elephants are hand-picked in a measure that helps ensure the safety of his team.
We never brought anything here that we thought was going to be a threat to our staff. We do have this one here, who had hurt several people before she came here. She didn't kill anybody, but she dumped a few people, so she took a little more work to be around. So my staff doesn't go in with her if I'm not here. She's just a little pushier, a little typical, if you will. But she's also my smartest. She's my thinker. I saw that. What's you doing? Now, here's a good example. These were somebody's pets. They were getting expensive. They were getting to be a lot for them to handle. They didn't really have to get rid of them, but they called and asked one day if we didn't have a better situation for them. And the only answer I had was, you know, we could put them in with the elephants, and if they got along fine. If they didn't, we'd have to turn around and bring them right back. That was, what, 10 years ago? And there are days we come out here and the elephants are resting their trunks on them. Now you're going to hear a lot of noise probably when the boy comes forward.
The mood changes quickly as there is a sudden commotion from the elephants.
Buffy back. Daddy, Buffy. Christy. Easy, that a girl. Buffy back. Back. This is Butch, and he's what we call big. What happened is there was a tractor back there that spooked Butch. He obviously told the girls and they ran running over there to help him. Ah, you big dork. So you see, in a lot of the larger organizations, accrediting organizations, what we're doing right now shouldn't be happening. But where I come from in the entertainment industry, you're never going to remember knowing elephants from looking at them from a barrier in a zoo like you will today. You got to meet them to know them, and you got to know them to want to help save them. And so, hey, there's humans back here.
Charlie has worked with exotics for more than 30 years, and the trust these animals have in him is remarkable. Surely it must take a special sort of person to be so trusted by a herd of elephants.
I do think you have to have the right personality for it. But they're smart, so there is somewhat of a science to it. And if you apply the science, if you learn it and apply it, it works. We don't handle them the way we used to. It's evolved like everything else. It's a far kinder training now than it used to be. But for the most part, yeah, I'd almost say it's somewhat easier than big cats because they're so smart that it removes a lot of the things you have no control of, and you can actually apply a little tiny bit of trust. They're like a horse. You try to get a horse to step on you or to run you over. I had a scene once where I had to have a horse charge into me and knock me down. It took us days to find one that would do it. They just instinctually have no interest in hurting you. But on the other hand, they're like children. You have to be their parent before you can be their friend. So you have to find that balance where they respect you enough to know that they have to listen and they have to behave, but there's a reward for it. you know, and they're smart enough to learn real fast. It works a lot better that way.
Charlie spent years building up his rapport with his elephants, and keeping elephants is a full-time job. In fact, it's a full-time job for several people.
Well, here's the problem. We're working with them all day. They're working, their minds are being kept busy. 24/7, we're working with them. And if you don't, they start pushing you around. And then it gets out of hand. Then you lose control, and that's when they become real dangerous. Butch says, I just want to help. Huh? Big door. So, again, you can't go to work every day and spend what little time you have left with an elephant. You have to be doing it full time. You have to be doing it professionally for a living to keep them manageable. But, on the other hand, do we treat them like pets? We treat everything like pets, but we do it professionally.
Spending so much time with his elephants, Charlie is completely at ease with them. But he's always alert to possible dangers.
Now, when they all went running that way towards Butch, and Christy was in the middle of it, I won't lie to you, I had a little concern there. That's a lot of elephant and very little Christy. So I headed that way. But once again, we've never had a bad day. We've never had an incident. They did just what I thought they were going to do. They ran to Butch because they thought he had a problem.
Charlie's closeness to his elephants is as much about enriching their lives as it is about enriching his.
The best mental stimulation they have is us. The second best mental stimulation they have is the other animals. And the third is themselves, the group. So, but they have a lot of things to do here. In the morning, my elephants deliver breakfast to the bed and breakfast. So they go up and they visit with people. Their breakfast baskets have bags of fruit that they get to share with the elephants. So there's the positive. That's why they walk up there with us and they're happy to do it. In the afternoon, people get to come and help us give them baths. And then at night, they go to bed. They get their treats and they go into their barns and they go to bed. So, this elephant is normally so shy, she'd be standing back over there, and I don't even try to make her come visit people. I have no idea what she's doing right now. She's obviously a camera hog. Paula, what's this about? Paula and Christy came together. Both came from circus. Christy back. Christy back. And there were some things we've changed. Like in circuses, they're not allowed to touch things with their tusks. Whereas in our environment, it was okay. So it took a while to teach her that this was okay. We're far more lenient than they needed to be in circus. So, if you will, they get away with a lot more. But we just cut it off at a certain point so that we keep the control and we keep enough respect so it's still a safe activity.
There are more than 100 exotic animals at Monterey Zoo, and Charlie claims not to have favorites. Watching him with his elephants, it becomes very obvious that maybe, just maybe, he does.
Some might say they're the flagship of our zoo. A lot of zoos have elephants, but I don't know. Everybody finds their magic in a different animal. Some people adore elephants, but some people would get on a plane and travel here for nothing more than those sloths. It's just wherever you find your magic.
Ethan may only be a child, but he's about to do something many adults wouldn't ever consider. He's about to risk his life. Ethan is at his grandfather's rural property where cattle would not be out of place. But these are not your average cattle. Ethan's grandfather, Dwayne, raises about 40 Watusi cattle on his Utah ranch. Putting a 10-year-old within reach of an animal of this size and temperament is a risk. But for Dwayne and Ethan, it is a calculated risk. Also known as the cattle of kings, an average Watusi weighs around 1,000 pounds, and their horns are the largest and most dramatic of any breed of cattle. That's exactly what makes them one of the most dangerous. Even Dwayne is wary.
I can get a little bit closer, but this cow's getting ready to have a calf, and I know her. I get halfway over there, she's gonna chase me out. That cow there will just take her baby and run. This new baby here, her mother would probably let us go up to her, but they are threatening because they're showing you. When they have a baby, you respect that, okay? You do not play with their babies. We play with one here because we know this cow. I mean, she was bottle raised. These cows here, you know that they're not gonna let you play with their baby. These cattle through the years, because of a lot of times the predators that are in Africa, the hyenas, okay? The mothers have become very, very protective. This little cow behind us, she's showing you, she does not want you to play with her baby. And so as protective as the mothers are, the bulls are really docile. They don't care. You can take that baby, but with the mama, you're not gonna play with it.
So why does Dwayne let his grandson climb into a pen with one of these potentially lethal beasts? It seems a common theme among owners of dangerous animals. Familiarity breeds trust.
This little cow's name is Tina, and she was bottle raised, okay? And that's why she's so gentle. My grandson Ethan here, he raised her on a bottle. This is his cow. And she just had a little baby calf just 3 days ago. Do you want to catch the calf, Ethan? Now you can see the little horns are already starting right here. You can see some real good growth on them as a year old. They'll be a year old, they should be out, you know, anywhere from 8 to 10 inches long and have a base on them, probably like that.
The breed does well in the Utah climate, and it is prized for its good looks, its robust and drought-hardy nature, and for those massive horns.
We started raising these in 1982. We've learned a lot about the Watusi, and you know, actually, a few years ago, we sent semen back to South Africa, where these animals originally come from, to get new bloodlines into a herd over there. We've understood that in Africa, they're after, you know, it's a thing of economics. Great big horns, great big long horns is harder for the animal to travel, to feed. And so in Africa, they're breeding the horns smaller. Yet in America, because we have an abundance of feed, we want our horns bigger.
And Dwayne certainly succeeded in breeding cattle with bigger horns. The world's largest, in fact. Dwayne's bull, Woody, earned him a place in the Guinness Book of Records for the largest horn circumference ever recorded. Woody's left horn far outsized its right hand counterpart, growing to a massive circumference of 40.5 inches. Although it didn't cause him any pain, it weighed so much that Woody would often rest it on the ground. Dwayne has also managed his herd to maintain the breed's distinctive markings.
If you'll notice the markings on this cow, she'll have this, she'll have the straight red over the back and the white down the sides. This guy will hold still. There are pictures of Watusi cattle on Egyptian walls. They date back 7,000 years, and they have this same design on them. And you won't find any other cattle that's got this design on them unless they've got some Watusi bloodlines in them. In Africa, you'll see a lot of the dark red colors. In the tribes, the kings, they liked the white Watusi. And a white Watusi is very valuable to them.
The herds were seen as a status symbol and played a significant role in tribal life.
In Africa, the more Watusis you own, it's kind of one of those things, I have more than you, or, you know, I have a whole bunch of Watusis, and it's kind of like money in the bank in Africa. The size of the horns are intimidating. I think in Africa, if a hyena come up or a lion came to a Watusi cow, you know, they're gonna look at that. They're gonna look at their defense first, you know, and I'm sure depending on what would happen over there, you know, but through the years, the Watusis have developed that real protective instinct to their young.
The Watusi's giant horns also help to keep it cool. Hundreds of tiny blood vessels cover the horns close to the surface, allowing heat to escape the body.
Where these cows originate from, they take the heat very well. And in the summertime, they'll slick right off, and they've got kind of an oily skin to them, which again, through the years, they've developed kind of a natural pesticide. You can actually rub them and brush them and smell the oil on your hands. They are a hardy cattle. In the wintertime here, because we have so much cold, we make sure that they have all the feed they want to eat, and we provide shelter for them. They don't have a lot of hair on their ears, and they don't have a lot of long hair like a normal cattle would. But you put fat on them, put some meat on them, and they do better.
The majority of incidents involving cattle occur on ranches and other sites where people are working with livestock. Hundreds of people are injured and 22 killed each year in the U.S. alone. Knowing the risks of accidents and that the cows can be easily provoked, Dwayne is always mindful of the danger.
There is an element of danger. It's the same as any other animal. You take a beef cow, they're going to protect their baby, okay? Some of them are not going to be as aggressive as others, okay? The same as a dog that just had brand new puppies. Some of them are going to let you play with them puppies, and some of them are not. Again, maybe the breed of a puppy or the breed of a different cattle is going to determine how protective they're going to be with their babies. The Watusis, normally you got to remember that they're protective. You know, you notice how long the horns are and how big they are, and yet you'll notice these cows don't use them as like a spear. I've seen so many little tiny sharp horns do so much damage to people, and yet these bigger horns like this, they'll actually, when they want another cow out of the road, or if they want you out of the road, they'll swing it and use it more like a bat.
While Ethan has never been hurt by his cows, Dwayne himself has learned some important lessons the hard way.
I had my knee replaced, and I got too close to a brand new baby, and the mother beat me to the fence. And she hit me. And all she did was she just hit me and turned around and went back to her baby. And that, you know, that's when I learned I can't move that fast. Stay away.
Like any large creature, no matter how familiar you are with the animal, its unpredictability is an ever-present danger.
The thing you always want to remember is know your animals, they're having babies, and they're protective. We have a couple of new babies over here. The one, the mother took it and left. The other one is a new mother, and she doesn't really mind if you're around her baby, but again, you have to know the animals.
It's obvious Dwayne takes great pride in his unusual herd, and he treats his Watusi with just the amount of respect horns like theirs deserve.
One thing to remember, if I run, you run. Yes. Please run slower than I do.
It may come as a surprise to some that the hills on the edge of the Cleveland National Forest, just outside of Alpine, California, are home to lions, tigers, and bears. Bobby Brink is the founder of Lions, Tigers, and Bears, a no-kill, no-breed, no-sell exotic animal sanctuary. The white tiger cub is one of their recent rescues.
Well, I thought I was going to be in the hospitality business. That's what I went to school for. It's funny, God sends you a different direction when you think you know what you're doing.
Bobby began working with exotic animals in 1992 when she took a job with a breeder and exhibitor. She quickly realized that it was not the dream job she had expected.
I met a guy with bears, and he taught me how to take care of bears, and then he would disappear all the time, and if I wouldn't go feed the bears, they wouldn't have food or water, and he'd be gone like weeks at a time. So I followed him one day. I followed him up from South Texas to the Texas-Arkansas border, and what he was doing is he would set up a ring, and they were wrestling bears, so you could pay $1,000 for the man to wrestle the bears, and then all the other men would bet who was going to win. I guess who was going to win, the bear or the man. And then I just, started seeing more and more and more, because it's just amazing some of the places we go, and the way people treat animals, and they'll have no fur from urine, and they're laying in their own urine, and they're drinking their own urine, and they don't see anything wrong. Like, they don't see that they're doing anything wrong. That amazes me.
Lions, Tigers, and Bears was founded in 2002 when Bobby rescued 2 endangered Bengal tigers. Only Bobby's direct intervention and negotiation with the owner saved them.
They were backyard pets. They were housed in a 6x12. No shade, no shelter. You and I couldn't live like that for 5 or 6 years. And the guy was threatening to shoot the animals if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife didn't leave him alone, because he considered them his property. But they worked it out, and he decided that we could take the tigers, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife gave us 30 days. And that's when we built that first small enclosure, because we only had 30 days to get the permits, cross the state lines, build something to house the tigers, and get them here. And that was the start. We like to say, here they go from rags to riches, because the animals we take here are usually the ones that nobody else will take. There's no place for them to go, because we work all over the country with the first responders. I've probably moved 400 animals, all lions, tigers, bears, cougars, in the last 5 years, to different sanctuaries across the country. So we work with a lot of sanctuaries, work with a lot of first responders, a lot of state authorities, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game, even private owners, and we don't judge. If you have got an animal and you're in over your head, and you're ready to find that animal home, and 90% of the time that's what we see happens with private ownership.
Seeing tigers for sale in a Walmart parking lot and at cattle auctions, and seeing big cat cubs used for photo opportunities, Bobby knew she was on the right path.
I went to one place on the East Coast, me and my friend, and the one photo facility had 22 cubs. So they can only use them till they're so big, and then they've got to replace those cubs with more cubs. So where do all the babies go? I believe some of them go to canned hunts, which is small area for people to shoot for a trophy, or they go as backyard pets. They're disposed of. Some of them are probably just killed and buried. There's no federal tracking of these animals. The lucky ones get to come to a legitimate sanctuary where they're not going to be bred, and at least get their dignity back and live out their life.
The majority of animals Bobby now takes care of have been rescued from private owners and even from other sanctuaries. An appointment with the vet is one of their first experiences at their new home.
Most of the animals that we go in and get, they've never had any medical care, no dental. Like the 2 leopards we have right now in the quarantine, we've spent 6 months of medical, and then the female couldn't put any weight on her front feet because she had been declawed all the way around so they could use her for the photo ops. And so she was literally trying to walk on her back feet. So when we went in to do the surgery on her feet, we ended up finding a lump on her abdomen, and it ended up being a mass on her uterus. And so You know, it just seems like one thing after another medically for her, and we're still trying to get her up here with the other cats, and she's been here a year.
And that looks like it's cleared up. So that's usually the best sign.
The white tiger cub also had severe health problems when first rescued, and after weeks in quarantine, her final vet check before going to a new enclosure is a great game.
Now that her lesions are coming back, we can do another fungal culture with that little DTM stuff. Have you seen it? It's like a special auger.
Bobby's 93-acre sanctuary is now home to a variety of rescued animals, and for many of them, the sanctuary was the first time they'd ever seen the sky or felt sunshine. This is the first time the white tiger cub has ever been on grass. But rescuing exotic animals is dangerous work.
Honestly, I think the first few weeks when I worked around these animals, I didn't think they were as dangerous as they are. I think the fear comes in after you experience, you know, a few things. And I think for myself, the danger is when we go into dangerous places and get animals out. Because a lot of times the cages are so dangerous, we can't dart because if they jump, they'll go through the cage. Or people have them housed in their dining room or their garage or their basement. They never really think about getting the animal out. Like there's no way to get a transfer cage down the basement stairs or in their little gates. Our cages don't fit through. You know, those are the more dangerous circumstances for my staff.
Rather than send her staff into dangerous situations, Bobby often puts herself in the line of fire.
And when I first started working with the animals, I worked free contact inside the cage. I just chose not to get anybody hurt. And a lot of times when you're rescuing animals, we don't even know, you know, these animals' past, how they were raised. It's just better safe than sorry. Because the way we've set up everything here is pretty safe. They work in twos. They'll shift the animal, which means they'll put it in an empty cage, and then the second person goes back and checks all the locks, checks that it's empty, and then they'll go in and clean. And then the same thing, when they go to put them back in the cage, they'll check the locks and then put it back, and then the second person will go back and check the lock. But that doesn't mean that human error can't happen, because if something happens, it would be human error. Somebody will make a mistake. That's why your buddy's so important, because that person has to have your back. These animals could kill you in a second. In a second.
For Bobby, the benefits far outweigh the risk. Sometimes an animal's rehabilitation requires a lot of patience.
You know, like we had one bear we brought from Ohio, and he was fine as long as you kept him locked up. Like when we brought him in the trailer, all the way across the country, we'd open the door and feed him, and he was fine, clean him out, and no problems. And then we brought him here, we always put animal in the quarantine and do all their medical, he was fine. But when we put him out in the habitat and opened the door to let him out, he was scared to death. And he'd just run back and forth and pace. So we would just open the door for 15 minutes, and the next day for an hour, and then, you know, a couple weeks later for half a day, and until the door was just left open. And then finally he would touch the dirt, because he'd never touched dirt before. And then finally he would go out, in and out, you know, make sure his little safety place was still there. Now he uses the whole habitat.
Bobby's priority is always the welfare of the animal. But how is her sanctuary any different to a zoo?
I think one of the biggest questions we get here is, why don't you give the animals to the zoo? And I think we do something totally different than a zoo, or two totally different organizations, but a lot of people don't realize these animals originated as surplus animals from the zoos, from the breeding programs, and that's how they got out into the private sector.
Bobby has strong views on the breeding and keeping of captive animals, views that have been established through many years of experience and first-hand knowledge.
There's approximately 220 AZA zoos in our country, and that's who holds the SSP plan, the Species Survival Plan, in our country. So supposedly this is the legitimate breeding that's going on in our country. You know, that's 220 zoos breeding. It's a lot. And you know, these are not animals that can go back in the wild, so there's really not much conservation value. The breeding is for the animals to stay in captivity. You can't put a lion or a tiger or a bear back out. They're gonna walk right up to you for food. And I don't think a lot of people realize that these animals are not being put back out in the wild. There is no proven plan to put them back that's working. And a lot of them, they don't know how to be a tiger. I've brought bears in here that are scared to death of space. You know, it took us 6 months to get the white tiger to walk out in the open space because she had never been out of a 10 by 10 and she was used for nothing other than breeding. So when she came here and there's the green grass and the pool, and she was afraid of the waterfall. So it just, a lot of TLC, a lot of time, and you know, now she'll use the whole habitat, but it took a long time. You know, one of the most important things we can give our animals is dirt. You know, it's like the difference of standing on a tile floor all day versus standing on carpet all day. There's a huge difference, and it makes a huge difference in arthritis and how their joints feel, and especially when it's cold.
Seeing distressed and mistreated animals takes an emotional toll, and Bobby also struggles with the idea that even the sanctuary she offers isn't ideal.
It's just a glamorized prison. That's what it is. You and I wouldn't want to live in there. I mean, it's beautiful, but you wouldn't want to stay in there for life. You know, when I first started working around the animals, I really didn't see anything wrong with the way they were housed and, you know, people having them as pets. And I think it just grows on you. Like myself, I've been, you know, working around these animals almost every single day since 1990, and it's really obvious they don't belong in a cage.
So part of Bobby's goal is to ensure that the animals live as closely as possible to how they would in the wild.
They don't make good pets. I think it's selfish. You know, and that's one thing that I've questioned myself about. You know, am I being selfish by, you know, wanting to have the animals? And I had to like get in check and make sure that there's a reason for every animal to be here. You know, just like the little bobcat that we took in Diego. If he could have went back out in the wild, that would have been the best thing for him. But unfortunately, he can't go back out in the wild, so he needs a place to live out his life.
Rescued grizzly bear Albert suffered from malnutrition that caused permanent neurological problems. And not all of the rescues turn out well.
They've destroyed part of his life. You know, the MRI shows he has no pain, but he still has to really think and rock back and forth to get up, and then he has to really think, you know, his brain has to think where he's putting his paws to walk. Of all the animals I have moved, I had to euthanize one lion. And that was very heartbreaking because it was just a big, beautiful lion, and he was literally dragging his back legs, you know, to the point where he was open wounds, you know, from drag. He could not move his back legs at all. That was hard. And it was really hard because he was in with 2 females. So not only did we have to euthanize him, but then we had to move the females out of their home. That was hard.
Bobby will continue to provide safe and enriching environments for abused and neglected animals already in captivity, leaving future generations to continue to ponder the question of finding a better solution.
I always tell my students and my interns, they're the ones, the younger generation, they're gonna make the decision. Do we work on saving the wild tigers in the wild? Because we only have about 3,000 tigers left in the wild, and it would be really nice to keep the ones that we have in the wild protected. Or do we continue to breed these animals for nothing more than to live in a cage? It will go to that generation, and again, they'll make that decision. But these animals, they live 20 years. So, you know, I figure I can do this a good 20, 30 more years. And, you know, hopefully there'll be some more laws in place to protect the animals, and there won't be as many animals in need of sanctuary. I mean, that would be ideal.